Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running talk show on computers and technology, and welcome into a Monday edition of the show. I hope all of you are doing well, and we can, make your Monday a little bit better by bringing you a great show. For anyone out there who did not check the show notes, we have indeed the man himself, Mr. Gary Kaye. And he is, for anyone new coming, I think our veterans should be quite familiar with this gentleman. But for any of you newcomers, he runs Tech50plus.com. Check it out, and it has a lot of articles and a lot of information that is obviously going to be focused on a 50 and older audience. But at the same time, there's interesting things for things like e-bikes and graduation gifts and connected homes. Just a lot of great content. Check it out, and happy to have him on here. But before we get to Gary himself, a few things we should mention, including computeramerica.com, that will have links to things like our guest website, any articles that we do, any videos that we show, just about anything that we have to do on the show here, we will include a link in the show notes. Second is the live video feed, where you can watch Computer America, not just listen. Just another way to experience the show. And the third thing is our contest. Now, thanks to our contest, there's multiple ways to enter. Things as simple as liking our Facebook, following us on Twitter, subscribing to our RSS feed, things like that. And thanks to that, we just hit 5,100 followers on Facebook. I want to say thank you to everyone that made that possible. And by the way, the thousands of you that have entered our contest, we want to thank you as well. So you can continue to do that. We will be giving away a new prize this Friday from Logitech. All the details and things like that, again, over at our website. Oh, and one more thing I need to mention is that over in the podcast section, I think we're still working on, actually, no, we are available on TuneIn through IRN, but at the same time, iHeartRadio. I don't mention it enough. We are officially on iHeartRadio. Check it out, computeramerica.com, right there in the podcast section. So, all right, with all that being said, the thumping in the background is the man himself, Mr. Gary Kaye, Chief Content Officer of Tech50 Plus. And Gary, thank you for joining us early this month.
Thanks, Ben. Too many gadgets on the desk, just rolling off into each other. So it may be the summer doldrums, but there seems to be a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, it's you think it'd be kind of CES, E3, like there'd be like a big convention, but right now it seems like all these tech companies, especially people like Amazon, they really aren't giving two hoots about waiting for any kind of convention. It's just whenever they seem to develop something, they hit the ground running with it, and they just announce it, and everyone picks up the story. And, we have a number of stories that we're going to talk about today. We'll kind of outline the agenda today, but we're definitely going to be talking about Amazon, and they have decided to enter the delivered meal kits. That's one story, but we also have things like connected devices and connected homes, things like Alexa and smart things, going cashless with things like PayPal. But a place that I wanted to start, though, is one of our favorite topics. We talk about it. We have talked about it a number of times, but it keeps developing because when we talk about self-driving cars, we're talking about a technology that is currently in development, and multiple billion-dollar companies are developing the technology behind it that are trying to bring it to the consumer space. So, when we talk about it 3 months ago, we didn't have all the information that we have now, and so that's why it makes it such a great topic to revisit. So, I think we're going to start with the self-driving cars, and you had a topic here about Uber. And Uber has been very open about their self-driving car ambitions. It's hit some it's hit some left turns, but at the same time, I think the point that you make is that it's not just an experimental technology that they're trying to develop. It's really kind of the future of Uber as you see it, I think, right?
Yeah, we did a panel that I moderated a few days ago at CE Week
Mm-hmm.
in New York, which is sort of a misnomer because CE Week is really just 2 days. And it was on 4 hot button tech issues for folks over 50. And one of them was from self-driving cars. And we had a guest from Uber and a fellow by the name of Malcolm Glenn, who is manager of their strategic partnerships for them. And what Malcolm sort of laid out, and I'd heard him speak before, which is why I had invited him to this panel, is that Uber looks at the self-driving car as a process and not necessarily an end. So while we're all sort of saying, oh, well, when are we going to be able to walk into a showroom and buy a self-driving car?
Mm-hmm.
Uber's attitude is, we really want to get specific use scenarios going for sort of robocars and largely in urban areas as a step forward in acceptance and implementation of the self-driving car. So, for example, Uber now has a couple of test beds going on. I think Pittsburgh is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're doing is, it's a self-driving car because, there is somebody behind the wheel, but he's really not doing anything other than taking notes. He's an engineer, and they'll pick you up and take you to where you want to go. But Uber is really concentrating on set routes. So within an urban environment, they are sort of scoping out every single block of their proposed routes to make sure that there are no potholes, no construction barriers, and so on, because the last thing you want to do is run into technology issues or simply physical issues that your device, your car, is not really capable of dealing with.
And I mean, just real quick, that was why the pioneer in self-driving car technology, which was Google, they developed their own closed system track. And when you hear those numbers that Google was putting out saying, aside from those the picture taking cars, they said they drove like 1 million miles of self-driving car technology, whatever. A lot of that 1 million miles was driven on a closed, pristine, ideal condition track. So it sounds like Uber's trying to ease themselves in kind of the same way.
Well, what we discussed was something that I think we sort of mentioned before, which is at CES we heard an interesting discussion from Nissan, which is teaming up with the guys from NASA who designed the Mars rover. So, self-driving cars are all rules-based. For example, you're driving along, you're on a 4-lane highway, two lanes in each direction. There's a double yellow line to your left, and in the lane to your right, there's fast-moving traffic. You're just sort of putting along, and all of a sudden, right in front of you, there is an axle busting or a man-eating pothole.
Yeah.
All right. What do you do? The rules say you can't swerve to the left because you'll be crossing the double yellow line. The rules say you can't swerve into the right because you'll be crossing into a line of moving traffic. So, what do you do?
I mean, for a human, I think their natural reaction would be, those double yellow lines, they are not a wall, and I need to avoid this pothole. I think, the human reaction would be to break the law, essentially, but for a computer, that gets a little trickier, doesn't it?
Yep. So right now, what can happen is that if they get to an obstacle that they're not expecting, they stop.
it's not the worst solution, but I guess at highway speeds and in a highway setting, that could be just as catastrophic.
Yeah, it ain't going to be fun for anyone concerned. So, I mean, the point here is that, we can talk about how sophisticated the technology is and how it can get you from point A to point B. But the reality is that all of this stuff takes place in a real world environment and not on a test track. And there's stuff that goes on in the real world environment that you're not really counting on. And you need exceptions to the rule. You may need human intervention on the part of a third party, like a monitoring service.
Well, yeah, and I mean, in that situation that you gave, wouldn't technology also be the answer there? Because obviously technology would have problems dealing with that situation, but I mean that kind of situation, it would ideally in a connected self-driving car world, where fleets of cars don't just talk to themselves and to a server, but also to each other. I mean, wouldn't they be able to kind of ping back and say, "Hey, every other car, there's a hazard at X coordinates," and even before they even get it fixed, I would hope that kind of self-driving cars would be able to kind of pick up. It'd be kind of like your friend saying, "Oh, when you're taking I-95, you really need to watch out around mile marker 383. There's a pothole on the left side." It'd be kind of like that, but on a much more automated and quickly dispersed information. I think I would hope that's how kind of it would overcome that kind of difficulty.
Okay, so you're quite correct. The answer to much of this is what they call V2V, which is vehicle-to-vehicle communications.
Right.
And the federal government has already asked for rulemaking proposals to get this out there and to get the technology implemented into cars. But the issue, Ben, becomes one of how long does it take to turn over the fleet? All it takes is one bozo who's not with a plan, and you got a problem. So we're talking about a massive conversion, and it's going to take a while. And so I think that the Uber strategy is a very smart one, because they're starting off sort of in baby steps, saying, we'll rely on what we know we can accomplish by ourselves without necessarily having to rely on the development of a broader infrastructure that we know is going to take some time.
That's true, and I mean, you're making me wish I was at that panel that you kind of moderated, because I've heard of multiple kind of steps to overcoming this, and one which I think is kind of America focused, U.S. focused, was the idea that in America, despite that it is crumbling and that it is in dire need of repair, our America's interstate system is one of the best in the world, and it's very, very connected, goes where you need to go. And I've heard proposals that you start with just like you have trucking lanes now, just like you have high occupancy vehicle HOV lanes now, you start off with maybe dedicated lanes specifically for self-driving cars. That'd be one way to go, and then eventually switching them all over to like all highways, every single highway. If you want to get on a highway, you have to have a self-driving car. Trying to transition really what is one of the most deadly parts of the driving experience and turn it over to computers. I mean, you're right. This is going to happen in baby steps, but I mean, what is Uber's kind of baby steps? Because I've heard there's a party over in Sweden that wants to have self-driving cars. They're already on the road. Like this is not in a year's time. It's happening right now. They want little shuttles, like you said, on a fixed route that take you the last 2 or 3 miles from your doorstep to the train station, and they want self-driving cars in neighborhoods where people can get hurt, but they think self-driving cars are the answer there. I mean, which way do you think, Gary Kaye? Which way do you think is the best way? Do you take out the highways first and then the city roads, or the other way around? Or does it not matter because it's all switching?
I don't know that it's either or. So let's kick around a couple of elements here.
Sure.
You know, what is Uber looking to do? I mean, one of the reasons why Uber is always happy to talk to an audience of older or disabled people is because they are the ones who really need mobility and who have the least access to it. So, you know, in terms of sort of the fixed route or the last 2 miles, or getting you to a doctor's appointment, getting you to a grocery store, a robo car from Uber would be absolutely ideal for that. The notion of limited access highways for self-driving cars is makes perfect sense. And I agree that at some point we may well see a transition in which we say, all right, in order to enter, the second lane or the third lane, you need to have, X technology, just as you need to have high occupancy vehicles to enter certain lanes in certain places at certain hours.
Right.
So that doesn't bother me. One of the things that I think is exciting, and I don't hear a lot of discussion about this, but if you are controlling where the car is going and you believe in Elon Musk's view of the future, it becomes entirely possible for you to power these highways as well. And just as, trolley cars used a catenary, you could, basically get on the road for the day or for 3,000 miles and not have to stop for fueling or recharging because, you'd be, dragging a tail that could pick up an electrical current.
That bathroom break at the end of 3,000 miles is going to feel so good. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah. But, you get the idea. I mean, I think that all of these technologies are really feasible. The only thing I wouldn't sit here and predict is how long it's going to take to roll them out. I do think that we are going to start seeing some Uber-like fixed route stuff coming into play within the next 2 to 5 years. But again, remember, there are regulatory issues involved, and there's a consumer confidence issue involved. A lot of people still are very uncomfortable. What was interesting in our panel is we asked folks, about whether or not they'd be willing to get into a self-driving car. And actually the bulk of them, and this was an older audience, I'd say it was not 50 plus, it was more like 70 plus. And they said, yeah, bring it on. I'll get into it. I don't want to drive at night. I don't want to deal with a car in an urban environment.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does seem like there's a, I don't know if it's machismo, I don't know if it's, personal liberties that they feel, but it's definitely an audience younger than 70, older than, I would say my generation, which is, young, early 20s, early 30s. There's that gap in the middle there that I think they say, well, who is the government, who is Tesla, who is Uber to say I can't drive my own car? They don't want to lose that, that freedom that they've had for a long time. So, but, we've talked long, at length about the benefits that come when you don't have to own a car, maintenance car, worry about insurance of a car, but you can simply get access to a car whenever you want it. So, I mean, let's get back to, of course, Uber. They were at this panel. They obviously, I guess they really didn't want to put any timelines out there because that obviously, makes them accountable to some kind of timeline. But did they say that they're working on like the individual fleets, or are they working to kind of bring a new car to market? I mean, where does Uber fit into the car market?
The sense that I got, and they're being very vague about this, is that they seem to be willing to commission special vehicles for an Uber fleet. One of the issues is that right now, very few Uber vehicles are handicap enabled or handicap accessible. And so one of the goals is to help develop a fleet of cars for finite areas that will be generally handicap accessible. And Uber feels, that's definitely a market, and it's one they, I think, would like to own. And there's no reason for them not to.
Well, I mean, the only reason
I think getting back to sort of what you're talking about in was it Sweden?
Yeah.
Where you're seeing these
last mile.
We're seeing some of them here. There's a company out in Vegas that's been his name totally escapes me, but they've been playing with this stuff.
Right.
So I think we're going to get really a sort of a hodgepodge as we stumble our way into the world of self-driving.
Yeah, and but it's not going to be a clear cut. In 2025 they're going to be available. In 2030 they're going to take over and blah blah blah. I mean, we do have to deal with news articles such as this one, which we'll throw it up on the video portion. But I did want to bring this up because it's not again, it's not just a straight line. It's a developing technology. And there's an article here, if you don't mind, I'm just going to try to run through it. But this is from The Independent. And Tesla crash, car flips and injures 5 passengers after autopilot mode suddenly accelerates, as they call it. Now, they say, let's see, it injures 5, so luckily no one was killed. But this is not the first time that we've heard that the suddenly accelerating auto-driving car has been an issue. Now, to be fair,
come on, Ben. I mean, really, how many accidents are there every day because somebody who's over 75 hits the accelerator instead of the brake, or a taxi driver goes over a curb and wipes out 15 people?
Well, that's
I don't, I hate to be sort of, blunt about it, but every technology advance comes with a price. And how many people died in airplane crashes in the early days of flying? Did we not develop commercial airplanes? I mean, I understand everybody is concerned about the safety aspects, and everybody is concerned, as they should be, about making sure the technology works right. But you're going to have mishaps. You're going to have accidents. You're going to have fatalities along the way. And, that's like saying, well, do we go back to the horse and buggy because people are getting killed by cars?
But I have something that backs up your point of view, and it's something that's kind of outlined and kind of hinted at by Tesla themselves. And again, when I've said that we've seen sudden acceleration, I'm using air quotes for those of you who can't see me. We've seen sudden acceleration claims on Tesla's autopilot before, but Tesla has this nifty little feature called a black box in every single one of their cars, and they can determine exactly what went wrong, just like they did with that gentleman who crashed into the back of an 18-wheeler. The truck, just like that woman who plowed through the wall of a nail salon, and just like the nail salon. She said that she was using the auto parking feature, and it suddenly, accelerated and went through the wall, and she blamed it on Tesla. Tesla found out through the data that no, she had it in manual mode, and she thought she was in reverse. She was actually in drive, and she slammed on the gas and panicked and went through the wall. And so this article here from The Independent essentially says about the same thing, saying that Tesla said in a statement following the accident that, quote, "No, it has no reason to believe the autopilot feature worked other than as designed." So I think people are going to try to claim, it's not so much about people were injured in this accident, where, I think human error, as long as humans are still involved in the driving process, these can still happen, but humans are going to try to blame self-driving cars for more than they are responsible for. Just like I think in this one, where I think shoddy driving, as long as there's a feature of self-driving cars, people will be able to point the finger except for that pesky little black box. And so far, they're still analyzing the data from this accident, but I know about 3 or 4 articles off the top of my head that all had Tesla at fault, and very, very rarely was Tesla truly at fault for accidents involving their cars. They're just plain safer, but stories like these do lead to the perception that they can be dangerous.
Yeah, when you look at the projections, and I have no reason to argue with the Department of Transportation on this, and they're predicting a reduction in automobile fatalities of close to 93% if self-driving cars are fully promulgated. You look at that number and you go, okay, so what about the other 7%? There's going to be another 7%.
Right.
But, there's not going to be 100%. There's not even going to be 90%. So I just accept. I'm not thrilled that anybody's ever going to have to die, but I accept the fact that technology comes at a price, and that in this case, the benefits, I suspect, will so far outweigh the price as to make it almost an absurd argument.
Right. And I think that's a good place to kind of leave off self-driving cars, because we do have a number of other topics to kind of get into. I did want to start it before the break.
Let's come back to Elon Musk when we come back, because he's got another story as well.
Right. Well, actually, we have about 4 minutes before we jump over, so I wanted to get the next one started so we could roll over. But Elon Musk.
All right. So Musk addressed the U.S. Governor's Conference within the last couple of days, and talked about, making solar energy sort of the law of the land, and basically said, you could, take like 100-mile by 100-mile swath in the Southwest and put in all of the solar panels you need to generate electricity for the entire United States.
And I mean, just to be clear, for those watching the video portion, we have the article up, and they have this nice little diagram of the continental United States, and there's a little red dot, somewhere in West Texas, Arizona, somewhere in that area, Nevada, whatever, and it's a little red square, and then the little white square right above that is the battery system, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But he's saying that red square on that diagram, and everyone think about, really, just a little red square in the bottom corner of a state, powers the entire United States just from that square.
So it ain't that easy.
Oh, of course not. Idea. Of course not, but yeah.
Transmission is still an issue. And the reason that we have alternating current is because direct current, which is generally what's created by solar energy, is horrendously inefficient in moving electricity from point A to point B, and especially over long distances. So, there's a lot of technology that needs to be implemented if Elon's notion is going to come to fruition. Doesn't mean it's impossible. I mean, you can do supercooling transmission, which will add a little bit to the cost, but I think it's feasible.
Right.
But the notion that in 2017 we're still using hydrocarbons to generate power to anything that either sits still or even moves is just stupid. Do you think I'm opinionated? You betcha I am. It's just stupid. We have enough renewable energy to power everything we need on this entire planet. So
it already does. Yeah, I mean, it already does. When you think about trees, animals, just the entire ecosystem around us runs, of course, on sunlight. So there's no reason to say that we can't do the exact same. And I think the main point of the diagram, of the picture of the United States with the squares, was that obviously you don't want to put all of your solar power in one place, because really, imagine an earthquake or a tornado, some kind of human intervention. Don't put all of your eggs in one basket. But
an asteroid.
Or an asteroid. But well, the dinosaurs, they said it wouldn't come, so twice. lightning doesn't strike twice. But no, the point is that it's that much of an area of solar panels spread out across the United States. Think about how many rooftop panels that would be, solar panels that would be across the U.S. It becomes more feasible when you just have to distribute that square across the entire United States. So, hey, and Gary, music means we have to take a break. We'll be right back. Everyone, Computer America, more after this.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And just like that, we are back, Computer America. Thank you for joining us. For anyone out there just joining us, where have you been? And welcome into, of course, the show where we have Mr. Gary Kaye. He is the managing editor over at, the chief content officer. Not that one. The chief content officer over at Tech50 Plus. But right now we're going over some technology that, it's emerging technology. It's technology that's coming in the near future, and it affects all of us in very different ways. But Gary, as you were saying about this article about, of course, Elon Musk, no one has ever called him small-minded. He thinks large, and of course he has a lot to gain if people take him up on his ideas, because obviously, he proposes 100 square miles of solar panels, and hey, guess who makes solar panels? Of course, Solar City and Tesla. And who makes the batteries? Well, Tesla makes the batteries. Obviously, this is a sales pitch, but it's a pretty convincing one, right?
Well, it certainly is. The fact is that using Musk's technology, we could convert most of the households, most individual freestanding homes, and even apartment complexes to solar energy. Without, I won't say without any sweat, but it ain't that tough. And remember, once you do that, the recurring costs are quite minimal. You don't have to keep buying fuel for it. You don't necessarily, if it's local, you don't necessarily have to maintain transmission grids because your own house will be its own little power plant. All of this to me makes tremendous sense. And, people go, well, I live in, New England and there's not enough power here. We go up to Vermont and to Maine and we see fields of solar panels up there. And you go to Northern Europe, which is further north in many instances than most of our states. And Germany, Sweden, Norway, and so on are all, jumping into big solar energy farms.
Go even further east than that. Go to China, and what was once the world's largest polluter in the country has turned into really the world's leader in green technology, because they've said that they will invest $500 billion. I think it was like this year or the next couple of years, $500 billion into solar.
Well, the Chinese have an ulterior motive, and
of course,
that is that they, without getting into necessarily a whole lot of dirty laundry, the Chinese set out about a decade ago to basically become monopolists in the field of solar panels by mass producing them at substantially below market prices. and drive people out of business. And in fact, they did that. They drove most of the American manufacturers out of business. And the idea of a monopolist is, you capture the market and then you start raising the prices because you've basically sucked out the rest of the supply chain. Elon Musk, interestingly enough, I think actually provides an alternative to that with his technology. And it's going to be an interesting battle. So yeah, the Chinese are doing it, but the Chinese sort of looked at this industry, as I say, more than a decade ago and said, this is where the future should be. And if you've ever been to Beijing in the winter, you can barely breathe because of all the pollution. And this is, a necessity for them to save themselves.
Yeah, no, but it's not just the Chinese saving themselves. This is kind of everyone saving themselves. It's China isn't on Earth alone, and I think that obviously they're doing it to improve air quality, which they definitely need, and I think we could definitely use some of that here in America. But I mean, we've even heard from the likes of generals and military leaders who say that the first country that develops green technology to the point where they get their energy solely from renewable energy is going to have a military advantage because they don't have to rely on importing fuel. They don't have to rely on anything else. I mean, hey, that's just free energy, just day in and day out. So, I mean, I think that there's a lot of people working towards this. Elon, I think, with this article and really with this proposal, kind of showed that it's it wouldn't take it's not impossible. Obviously, the price tag, I don't know if it was listed in the article, but I believe it was somewhere in the neighborhood of about $2 trillion. Now, hey, at least there's a price tag to it. It's not incalculable, but $2 trillion, I think, is a such a large number that I think it's a little unfeasible at the moment. But it's a number. We have something to work on.
The old Chinese proverb, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And I think that Musk has the right idea, and he's already implementing it with his new factories and so on. And so, I think that it's a hopeful sign. Somebody really should drop a note to Mr. Trump to tell him that hydrocarbons are so 19th century. But he wants to go save the jobs of coal miners, and boy, does he ever not get it.
Yeah, and we don't get into politics too much, but because it's so closely related, I mean, I think it was somewhere said that the solar industry already employs more people than the entire coal industry at the moment. So, and the solar industry is only going to expand at this point. So.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be in Colorado in another week or so on vacation, and where solar has become very, very big.
Yeah. What part of Colorado? Denver?
Well, we're starting off in Denver, and then we're going out to southwestern Colorado to some of the old mining towns and to Mesa Verde.
Neat.
The old pueblos.
Yeah, our booking got us, and actually, our one of our old producers actually lives in Boulder, Colorado. So yeah, very, very cool. But yeah, that's neither here nor there. That's in Colorado. Sorry for all you Colorado listeners. But let's jump into some of the other articles that we have here, because green technology, that is something that will continue to be developed, and I think Elon Musk and Tesla is going to be at the forefront of that. But let's talk about something.
Let's talk about Alexa and connected home and all that jazz.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Sure. Let's do that.
Because this is a lot of fun. No, it's not so much fun. It's really pretty frustrating. One of our contributing editors, Bill Stoller, just did a piece in which he took a lot of the Logitech elements, their Harmony, their pop switch, and all sort of connected with Alexa as the voice control, and started trying to put all of this stuff together. And we started off a few years ago, and Ben, you probably remember this, where we had things. We had these really arcane standards like Zigbee and Z-Wave.
You say that like it was ancient history. That was at
Well, it
most
was.
two.
It seems like
At most 2 years
that's
ago. Yeah.
well, yeah, 2, 3 years ago they were still hawking it at CES. And basically it meant you needed to use the electrical system in your house and wire things into it and so on. Well, now everything is Wi-Fi, and increasingly it's voice controlled. But, what we're seeing is that it still is not a seamless process. And, there are a lot of elements, a lot of moving parts to this. So, I really spend a lot of time sort of cautioning folks before you go out and start wiring up or wirelessly up your home for, the connected home. Really delve into it, because what we found just in our own little efforts was that, even though it says you can get the Harmony to talk to Alexa and Alexa to change the channels and all that, sometimes yes, sometimes no. And as Bill says, are there fixes for it? Yeah, but who wants to spend all that time? What you really want is something seamless that's plug and play. And I'm sorry, it's still not there yet. It is getting better. I was at a demonstration for Google Home with Google Assistant, and it's capable of doing a lot of stuff. And it's nice, but again, those are sort of closed loop demonstrations, and you never know what's going to happen in the real world.
Right. It's something that that comes up often, is that I think the point, like the tipping point for computers, because what they're pushing, what Google is pushing, what Amazon is pushing, what Apple will eventually push, is not just a digital assistant. It's going to be, in a lot of ways, the future of how people interact with computers. Keyboard and mouse, I'm sure power users, myself included, we're still going to love our keyboards and mouse, and we're still going to use them for a long, long time. But for the kids of the next generation, or even just the workers of the next generation, talking to computers is going to be much more efficient than a keyboard and mouse in a lot of ways. So I think
I agree with you, Ben, and I actually think that this is also going to be very useful for my generation.
Oh, absolutely.
Who really don't necessarily want to deal with keyboards and screens and the like.
Right, but the point I was going to make with and it definitely applies to your generation as well, is that the tipping point is going to come when people don't have to learn the language of computers, but computers learn the language of humans. So instead of knowing Alexa's commands, instead you could just talk to Alexa, and Alexa would be able to translate, hey, order me some dinner, and next thing you know, Chinese food pops up at your house 20 minutes later. As soon as computers learn to talk the language of humans,
they're going to blow the order anyway.
Yeah, of course. But as soon as computers learn to talk the language of humans, that's the tipping point. But right now, you still have to know the language of computers to make this work.
Well, I think that we're certainly seeing significant progress forward on that score from both the Amazon Alexa ecosystem and also Google Home. I mean, Google was late to the party, but their stuff is actually pretty impressive. It's like when they jump in, they're pretty good. Mm-hmm. And I suspect Apple, once it finally really gets HomeKit together, will also be a viable competitor. I think one of the most interesting things that's happened in the last couple of weeks is that both Google and Apple have said that they will now be able to interoperate with Alexa. And, so that we may not have to live through another, I don't know how many of your listeners are going to remember the battle over videotape. Oh, what was videotape, Grandpa? between VHS and Betamax, and it was basically a battle to the death. Everybody in the industry thought that Betamax was the superior format. VHS outmarketed the crap out of them. VHS lived, Betamax died. And I think these guys are basically saying that, and we've seen the same thing with digital disc formats. And I think these guys are basically saying, you know what, we can't afford this kind of multi-million-dollar battle at this stage. We really need to get these technologies adopted.
Right. Yeah.
And out there. And if we have to, sort of say, all right, we'll open up a little bit. I think that's a very nice solution. And I think that you're right. I think the artificial intelligence that's coming along is really quite impressive. Google Home will allow you to do a lot of what you've just been saying, which is just speaking in a natural tone without a command structure.
Right.
And so, show me a recipe for chocolate chip cookies. And you get a recipe for chocolate chip cookies on your screen. I'm still a little nervous about the security issues. I'm not really satisfied that the security protocols are sufficient to protect you from somebody who wants to hack into your system. And that I'm hoping it's going to change. But right now, if you're very security conscious, I think that's something that's worth considering.
The only kind of credible evidence I've had of security mentioned on the show by really anyone that is familiar with it is that you are hiding in the crowd right now. Right now, unless you are a state official, unless you are a celebrity, a person of interest, then people really don't care to hack into your Alexa. Like, it's not saying that it's impossible to do. They're just saying that there's so much data going around, no one really cares about one individual. So right now, that seems to be the security approach.
I'm sorry. The problem that I see isn't the data. The problem is as you start connecting stuff up and you enable your front doors locked and unlocked, your garage locked and unlocked, your security camera feeds, that's where I worry. It's not, the data that's stored in the cloud. It is the ability for somebody to just hack in and walk into my apartment.
Yeah. It's and again, it's something that we've had Kwikset on when they had their second generation of smart locks, and we asked him point blank, it's like, is this impossible to hack? And he's like, well, no, but at some point it's, do you really want to be concerned about your smart lock unlocking the door for a criminal who's hacked into it, done all this, sci-fi movie stuff? Or are you really going to be worried about the guy who's going to pick up a rock next to your front door and smash the window and just walk in? You can be concerned about smart locks and, and smart speakers and smart lighting all you want, but, are you really any more vulnerable than, it's just like self-driving cars. Are you really any more vulnerable than you were before?
Well, I think in terms of what you're referring to, there are some solutions. I mean, one of the elements of these systems is security monitoring. Everything from video doorbells to glass breakage to water damage, and all of that makes sense. I think that it's going to get better as the biometrics improve. Right now, in the case of a lot of our transactions, it's the double verification. It's here's your password. Okay, now I'm going to text you to make sure that you're who you say you are. And I'm not saying that that's going to happen with all of these things, but I think it would not be at all unusual to basically have an iris scan backed up with voice recognition or facial recognition.
Right.
So I think there are enough different elements that you can put together to generate a pretty high level of security.
And I think Google already has part of the puzzle already solved, where the Google Home will be able to tell different voices from one another. And we have this article here that I think we're only going to lightly touch on, and it's the idea that Alexa is coming to I never know how to say this, the Huawei Mate 9.
Huawei.
Yahweh. Perfect.
It's my way or Huawei.
My way or Huawei. So yeah, and Alexa, the digital assistant, at least in a dumbed down form, is coming to the smartphone, and is gonna, of course, hook in seamlessly, so they claim, with all the Alexa products. I mean, if you take a digital assistant, or at least the combined digital assistant, and you start to build up habits, you talk a certain way, your sentence structures are a certain way, your voice sounds a certain way, eventually, artificial intelligence, and again, I'm not blue skying here about, in some dystopian 15, 20 years, it's already happening. These artificial intelligences are going to be able to tell when you are not the one trying to access your data. They already do it with emails. If you've ever tried to log into your email from your friend's laptop, you get a message, you get an alert saying, hey, is this you? And they send you an email or a text message. I mean, I'm expecting something like that to happen in the near future.
That's the kind of verification I was referring to.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right, but it's going to be very seamless.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that in the long run, you are correct. I think that what we're going to see is a generation in which our traditional notion of interacting with a device,
right,
changes 180 degrees, and that you don't need a device, or the device will be sort of transparent to the process, and it's going to be very exciting. And I just sort of wonder how much time we're going to spend pulling out our hair until it all works right. I mean, for those of us who remember the days of DOS and Windows 2.0, it was a messy trip.
Well, yeah, and speaking of things that just work right, if you don't mind, why don't we switch over to our next topic? And actually, before we do that, let's we talked about Amazon Alexa. Let's do Amazon the Meal Kit service, which I think a lot of your audience would like. I mean, I use it myself. I definitely like it. But this is a new player coming into the market. But this new player happens to be the heavyweight champion of the world right now. So, and of course, I'm referring to everyone. You can check it out. We have a link in the show notes. But Amazon, they are trying to take on Blue Apron. Blue Apron, they were a sponsor on the show a couple of months ago, and I tried out their service. It was a lot of fun. I don't think it was quite for me, but at the same time, it was like I could definitely see the appeal. So Amazon is trying something similar because, as I'm sure you know, Gary, they are getting into groceries more and more. Like Amazon is, if they play their cards right, Amazon is going to replace not only malls and Walmarts, but they're going to replace grocery stores next. Like that's their deal. So Amazon is about to step into the meal kit delivery service. So my question to you, Gary, is have you ever tried these services? And if not, why? And if so, what do you think of them?
Well, I have not. I've never really, I work from home, and if I want to go to a store, I like recreational shopping. So to me, getting into some of my favorite stores is actually sort of fun because, I'll pretty much stick to a list. But if there's stuff there that, when I get to the store that I hadn't thought of that looks pretty interesting, I'll try that.
You and Craig, you and Craig are the exact same way. Yeah.
At some point, it may be fine. But I think the interesting thing here is if you look at what Amazon is becoming, it is now the 900-pound gorilla in so many different fields.
Yeah.
They're moving into clothing. They're moving into groceries. They're moving into meal kit delivery. I can't imagine a week going by that I don't place an order through Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable. $99 a year, and boy, is it ever worth it. Because, as I say, and with the other members of my family, we have packages showing up here on an average 3-4 days a week from Amazon. What a sea change this has been.
Mm-hmm.
So I simply view the meal kit delivery as one more step in this hegemony. And the interesting thing about it is that from an antitrust perspective, there is no antitrust. They're not going after competitors in a single place. They're going after the whole landscape.
Yeah.
And winning. And we're going to have drone delivery. We're going to have, stuff being delivered inside of, an hour, 2 hours. We're going to have dramatic changes in distribution schemes. It's going to be a pretty remarkable world, and it's coming like next week. It ain't that far off.
It's coming in 2 to 3 days. Amazon Prime guarantee. That's certainly the case. I mean, but again, this is Amazon Fresh and Amazon Pantry, and again, the reason that they can kind of do this, and something that you were kind of touching on was that they aren't just looking for small potatoes. They aren't just looking to edge out their competitors. They've even made moves such as buying Whole Foods, which made a big splash, I think, the day it happened, but we haven't really thought about the implications since then. I mean, they now have, think of all the different Whole Foods that are around the country. Every one of those is suddenly an Amazon distribution center. I mean,
right.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that's very likely to change to the benefit of consumers is that the pricing structure, I think, is likely to be revamped. The name for Whole Foods has been Whole Paycheck.
Yeah.
And when you compare them to like Trader Joe's, they're incredibly overpriced. And I think that's going to start to change as they broaden their distribution and can lower their per transaction costs significantly through volume. So I agree. I think this is going to be a tremendous change eventually in the way we buy almost anything.
Yeah. It's clothing and food and tchotchkes and technology. Heck, I even buy dog food off of Amazon. It is definitely changed the way that I have shopped. Now I only go out for either instant gratification or really convenient items that I just kind of need right there. So
I'll give you a couple of really quick examples. I'm going on vacation later this week. I needed a 49 millimeter UV lens filter for a new lens that I'm trying out, and I needed it in 2 days flat. Where else am I going to go? Boom.
Right.
So it'll be here in 2 days. But it's weird stuff. I go for one of my favorite offbeat things is a Greek fish roe dip called taramasalata.
All right.
There are only 2 ways I can get it. I can either schlep into New York, which is about an 1.5 to 2 hour trip for me, or I can click on one click to Amazon and it'll be delivered within 2 days at less cost.
Yeah. Yeah, they've changed.
90 seconds.
They've definitely changed the market in arguably a good way for consumers, but I think a lot of their competitors are starting to feel the squeeze. I mean, heck, even Walmart is trying.
Walmart is shaking in their boots.
Yeah, Walmart is trying to adapt. Is trying to adapt as fast as they can. But hey, Gary, the music means that we're just about done. If people want to find out more about Tech50 Plus, about the different articles that you write, where can they go?
www.tech50plus.com.
60 seconds.
www.tech number 5 number 0 plus.com, because the URL guys will not recognize the plus sign.
There you go. So yeah, and again, we have a link in the show notes directly from Computer America. So Gary, thank you for joining us early. This was a lot of fun, and thank you so much.
All right, always fun, Ben. Thank you.
All right, catch you next time. So, and everyone out there, thank you for joining us here on Computer America. Hopefully, you can join us tomorrow. As let's see, we have on the program. Oh, I should know this off the top of my head. Tomorrow on the program, Yamaha. That's right. I think we're going to be talking about their keyboards, and hey, it's and also their acoustic drums. So we'll be here, Computer America. Everyone, catch you tomorrow. Bye.
10 seconds.